Hallo en welkom by Fokus op die vooraan van Menseregte Dag. Ek is Lenet Francis. Later in die program praat ons oor die feit dat Suid-Afrika nog nie wetgewing in plek het wat mensenhandel 'n misdaad maak nie. Ons vra die voorsitter van die parlementêre portefeulje komitee oor justisie hoe ver die proses gevorder het. Maar eers Fokus het verlede jaar berig oor 'n 3-jarige dogtertjie wat verkragt, verwrig en met 'n klip vermoor is in 'n wingerd op 'n plaas buite Vredendal langs die Weskus. Die wrede daad was na bewering deur 2 minderjarige seuns gepleeg. Vrydag het 'n soortgelyke voorval weer die gemeenskap geruk. Hoewel die jongste slagoffer oorleef het, word vrae nou gevra oor hoekom die beweerde oortreders van die vorige daad toegelaat is om vir maande op vrye voet te wees. Deurslaggewende DNA-toetse is na byna 'n jaar ook nie afgehandel nie. 'n Verdagte in Vrydag se voorval, ook 'n minderjarige seun, is reeds in hegtenis geneem en sal môre in die hof op Vredendal verskyn. Hier is regisseur Dani Juffers se eksklusiewe verslag.
Die jongste voorval het in 'n wingerd in die Spreidrif-omgewing buite Vredendal plaasgevind en die skooldogter is na bewering seksueel aangerand. Die 7-jarige slagoffertjie is 'n leerling by die Spreidrif Laerskool en sy is Vrydagmiddag na skool aangeval deur 'n 10-jarige seun.
Daar was 'n redelike erge bloeding onder haar een oog. Ek vermoed vandag is die oog waarskynlik potblou. Haar hele voorkop aan die regterkant is opgehewe. Dit gaan 'n blou pers kleur maak. Tot so die helfte van haar koppie. Dis 'n klein dogtertjie. Haar linkerhand is baie erg opgeswel, daar was baie bloederigheid. Ek het omdat daar beweringe gemaak is van verkrachting, het ek haar daaroor ondervra. Sy het nie gedetailleerd daarop reageer, sy het net 'n paar keer vir my gesê die kind wou haar ernstig seer gemaak het.
Sy was waarskynlik gelukkig geweest, nee. Vertel my 'n bietjie wat het gebeur, daar het iets gebeur wat waarskynlik haar lewe kon gered het, nee.
Weet jy, sy het vir my gesê haar broer wat 11 jaar oud is, het verby die toneel gekom en gesien hoe sleg sy lyk en hoe seer sy kry. En daar was 'n insident tussen hom en die beweerde oortreder en daar was nog 'n volwasse persoon wat verbygekom het. En ek glo dit het moontlik haar lewe gered.
Op hierdie oomblik kan ons bevestig dat 'n insident plaasgevind het op 'n plaas tussen die wingerde in die Vredendal omgewing. Dat dit gebeur tussen 12:00 die middag en 3:00.
Die kind is helder oordag aangeval toe sy 'n maklike staptog van sowat 5 km van die skool na haar woonhuis op 'n nabygeleë plaas aangepak het.
Sy het vir my in konsultasie gesê sy is erg verwrig. Sy het tydens die konsultasie sy nekstit aangegaan en ek kon gesien en daar was ongemak by haar nek gewees.
En sy is waarskynlik met 'n, ek dink iets met 'n klip.
Ja, volgens haar weergawe is dit 'n groot klip. Sy het vir my verduidelik die klip is groter as wat haar koppie is.
Verlede jaar se moord op 'n 3-jarige dogtertjie deur 2 minderjarige seuns het in dieselfde omgewing voorgekom en die aard van Vrydag se voorval en beserings blyk presies dieselfde te wees. En die polisie het vanoggend bevestig dat verlede jaar se 2 beweerde oortreders nou al vir maande vry in die omgewing en gemeenskap rondloop.
Dit word ondersoek of die verdagte dieselfde persoon is wat in laas jaar Mei maand die soortgelyke oortreding begaan het.
Die erg geskokte dogtertjie was vanoggend steeds in die Vredendal Hospitaal op die dorp vir haar beserings behandel. Fokus is toegang tot die hospitaal geweier en die kind se pleegouers wou nie 'n onderhoud toestaan nie.
Verlede jaar was daar 'n insident, ek was nie betrokke by die ondersoek nie, maar daar's baie sterk ooreenkomste en volgens wat ek verstaan is daardie kinders nog steeds in die gemeenskap.
Dit is 'n 3-jarige dogtertjie toe.
'n 3-jarige dogtertjie wat verkragt en vermoor is, ja. En dieselfde modus operandi ook met 'n klip oor die kop geslaan, toe die kleintjie bewusteloos en toe sy eers verkragt en toe vermoor.
Ek gaan my nie uitlaat rondom dit wat jy vir my vra nie, maar 'n ondersoek word geloods deur die polisie en dan as daar bewysstukke en goeders gekry word, dan word dit dan gestuur vir ontleding.
Die ontleding waarna verwys word is DNA-toetse wat na maande nog steeds nie afgehandel is nie. Intussen het 'n ingeligte bron vanoggend aan Fokus bevestig dat Vrydag se oortreder blykbaar wel een van verlede jaar se verdagtes is, wat beteken dat 'n trae regsproses Vredendal se jongste slagoffertjie waarskynlik gefaal het. Dani Juffers vir Fokus Vredendal.
Net hierna mensenhandel in Suid-Afrika en slagoffers se hartseer verhale. Bly ingeskakel. Welkom terug. Mensenroof is 'n landwyse verskynsel en in baie gevalle is die doel om vroue en kinders aan die seksbedryf bloot te stel. Die polisie in Durban het 'n maand gelede op 'n syndikaat toegeslaan wat na bewering minderjarige meisies en vroue gewerf het om in die bedryf te werk. Van die kinders was so jonk as 10 jaar oud. Fokus regisseur Julien Phyllis en kameraman Malusi Tanzi het die verslag saamgestel.
Menseregte, 'n reg wat gierige bordeel-eienaars landwyd ontneem van miljoene jong kinders en vroue. In meeste gevalle besoek die slagoffers nagklubs en word deur bordeel-eienaars aangemoedig om met dwelms te eksperimenteer. Dae later is die jong vroue vasgevang in 'n web van dwelms en prostitusie. Hoewel bordeel-eienaars se modus operandi verskil, bly hulle doel dieselfde: om vroue as seksslawe te gebruik vir finansiële gewin.
For years now, we've been developing a trafficking in persons bill. It's still a bill. And it would strengthen the arm of the criminal justice system. It would be looking more deeply at issues of prevention and rehabilitation if that bill were passed.
Die vrou van Durban is steeds geskok nadat sy vroeër vanjaar uit die kloue van 2 bordeel-eienaars ontsnap het. Sy is een van 3 vroue wat na bewering die mans na Johannesburg vergesel het en later in Rustenburg opgeëindig het, waar hulle as seksslawe gewerk het. Sy het hulp by 'n onbekende man gevra. Toe sy haar oë uitvee, is sy die jongste slagoffer op die mark in Pretoria.
This was worse in Rustenburg because this whole flats, all this flats was infested with Nigerians and girls, and you could see these girls have been drugging for years and drinking.
Sy het getuig hoe hulle heeldag dwelms en drank gevoer is. Terwyl sy in die web vasgevang was, was sy hoogswanger en onbewus dat sy in kraam was.
Nigerians thought hitting girls, and I've seen it happening while I was there. They hit the girls. The Nigerians would stand on the road and watch the girls prostitutes. If you go in the flats with the guy, they would stand outside. As soon as you come out, they are there waiting for the money. You didn't have to go buy alcohol because they would buy your alcohol. There was always food in the fridge, always food, so there was basically no need to go out.
Baie van die vroue word in meer as een woonstel of huis aangehou. Die kinders word in 'n aparte woonstel aangehou sodat dit moeilik is om van die mans vas te trek. Die slagoffers word gedwing om minstens R1000 per aand te maak.
You go into one of these Nigerians' houses and you sit there, you know, you can actually smell, you can smell that these girls got infections, that they're infected, and the Nigerian don't care. As long as the girl have a part change, you go out, you take your wake up, your drug, you have your beer. And even for the girls to get money for something to eat in the morning, it's very difficult. It doesn't just come like that. Oh, my friend, how much you made last night? You think you only made 200 or 300 rand. You think you're going to get food money out of your 200 and 300 rand. What money is that there?
In Februarie van die jaar het die Durbanse polisie 'n syndikaat vasgetrek wat 16 vroue en kinders gebruik het om as seksslawe te werk. 'n Ouer van Durban vertel hoe sy al 5 jaar probeer om haar 17-jarige dogter uit die misdadigers se hande te red. Die kind ontvang tans berading en is deel van die polisie se getuienisbeskermingsprogram.
I'm very angry of them. I'm very, very angry. Only thing now, they are behind. We can't find it ourselves now, you see. But we like to see them, those people. I'm very angry because our kids are so young, age of 12 years, you see. It's very young that you can have your kids at this age and he's sick.
Most of the clients want sex without a condom. They offer you more money And because of the drugs, yes, the ladies do agree to take the money. And you don't know if the client is positive or if you're positive, and you go, even if you're negative, you don't know, and you go ahead and you do it, and then you can turn out positive just because of that extra money. And the dealers don't care whether you're positive or you're negative as long as they're getting the money. And while you're healthy, because some people can be positive and still look healthy, and while you're healthy, it's all fine for them. But the minute you're damaged or you're sick, they don't want you anymore.
Bordeel-eienaars teiken veral minderjarige kinders omdat hulle as vars vleis beskou word. Toe Fokus op lig gaan, het die ouers van 5 kinders nog nie na vore gekom nie.
I was shocked and surprised to see that how many parents have visited this office to come and identify their children, and only to find that it's not their children that they're looking for, because there's not data in the photographs. So we had hundreds of parents that came in to look at the photos, and then only to find that their children are not there. So it gives me an indication that if so many parents are here looking for children, that means there's a large number of children that are missing.
Beweringe word gemaak dat die lewens van talle kinders verwoes word deur die land se regstelsel.
I was in the business of prostitution 4 years ago, and as soon as we got picked up from a police, when we get to the station, who are you working for? And they found your dealer or your runner, and you get taken out immediately. So you don't know who to run to.
There are rich guys out there that are actually in charge of these big operations. If you think about it being a $10 to $12 billion industry, you know, it's not just a stupid little pimp on the side of the street that's making the money. So it's huge.
In sekere gevalle is die slagoffers voorheen seksueel misbruik of het in moeilike omstandighede groot geword.
This whole process has now started to take place where the spotter, the recruiter, the buyer, the seller, the transporter, the harborer, the financier, the brothel keeper, the pimp, and the clientele, all of these people have formed this web around this vulnerable person, the traffic victim, and they don't even know that it's happening to them.
Kenners meen daar moet streng klem gelê word op die polisieering van prostituie. Daar word al jare by die regering gesmeek om slagoffers beter te beskerm.
There's no ongoing surveillance or policing of a report. So maybe the police will go in, they will, kind of have a raid and deal with the immediate things that are in their face. But there's no ongoing monitoring of the situation that keeps children safe and is truly preventative in the long term.
Net hierna vra ons hoekom die wetsontwerp rondom mensenhandel nog nie afgehandel is nie. Bly ingeskakel.
That's disturbing, eh?
Yeah.
It's just disturbing. God alone knows. If you look at that chain of people, all eyes on this person.
But it's not just one person.
Yeah.
They have several.
Welkom terug. Soos ons pas in die vorige insetsel gesien het, is die gebrek aan wetgewing met spesifieke verwysing na mensenhandel in Suid-Afrika iets wat gemoedere landwyd laat opvlam. The much discussed Prevention and Combating of Human Trafficking Bill has been described as a step in the right direction. It's estimated that up to 1 million people are trafficked worldwide each year. In March 2010, anti-trafficking groups were pleased about government's plans to fast-track the legislation. With me in the studio to discuss this issue is Mr. Llewellyn Landis, Chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development. Good evening, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
We were both horrified looking at that insert, and if we look at South Africa being described as one of the major human trafficking destinations, I think we all want to know is what has been the delay in passing this legislation?
I'm grateful to you for this opportunity, and in answering your question, just a few comments before I get to your actual question. The identified purposes for trafficking in South Africa is, according to the Hawks, sexual exploitation, the international sex industry, forced marriage, forced labor, organ theft, and illegal adoption. Now, we don't have a comprehensive legal framework at the moment, but presently, law enforcement agencies use existing legislation to prosecute offenders. And some of these are in the common law, that is abduction and kidnapping, extortion, common assault, assault with grievous bodily harm, attempted murder, and murder. In addition to those common law offenses, you also have the Children's Act, which specifically outlaws trafficking in children. And in addition to that, you have the Sexual Offences Amendment Act, which specifically outlaws trafficking for sexual purposes. Now, South Africa is a signatory to the Palermo Convention.
Yes.
And in terms of that convention, South Africa must pass domestic legislation that not only outlaws trafficking, it must seek to prevent trafficking in humans, and it must ensure the rehabilitation and assistance of victims of trafficking, which the common law and the present legislation I refer to doesn't deal with. Now, in terms of the legislation that is before the Justice and Portfolio Committee of the National Assembly, there are something like 6 departments of state involved. And you need to understand that coordinating those 6 departments is not an easy task, given the functions each department has. Those departments are the Justice Department, including the National Prosecuting Authority, South African Police Service, including the Hawks, Social Development, the Home Affairs Department, International Relations, and then added to that, you have their provincial counterparts. So it's quite a major undertaking to coordinate all these.
So we haven't been able, within 2 years, been able to coordinate anything or anyone?
Well, presently, where we're at is to ensure that the immigration laws are not abused when trafficked victims end up in South Africa. And that discussion is at the ministerial level, and we're hoping soon that they will reach an agreement, and that will allow us to proceed with our further consideration of the bill that is before us.
A lot has been said, and there was great enthusiasm when the bill was tabled in March 2010. And whilst we've not really moved towards passing the bill, a lot of victims, particularly in South Africa, and we saw the insert there in Durban, the victims have grown. You've had a lot of criticism from organizations, particularly activism groups and NGOs, saying But if we get this in place, at least we don't have to prosecute on these other charges, this other legislation that you've mentioned. Other charges, because what eventually happens is these guys get lighter sentences, so we're not that effective.
Well, that's not quite true, actually. In 2011, a human trafficker by the name of Adina dos Santos was sentenced to life imprisonment. Adina dos Santos persuaded a young girl in Mozambique to join her in Pretoria on the pretext of offering her a job as a hairdresser. She forced her into prostitution, and as a consequence, Adina dos Santos is now serving life imprisonment. This year, a Cape Town man received 15 years imprisonment for trafficking, 7 of which will run concurrently with a sentence of 15 years for rape. He lured a woman from Swaziland to join him in South Africa again, purportedly in exchange for a job, and she became his sex slave. So to say there are light sentences is not quite correct.
On which legislation or which current laws were they prosecuted?
The very same laws that I referred to earlier in our discussion.
Let's talk about answers, because I think that was the prominent issue that came up a lot from NGOs and also victims. What do you and what do we as the justice system say to victims who say and accuse us that we failed them because we don't have our ducks in order?
Well, I think, Lynette, even when the trafficking bill is finalized, passed into law by the president, these things will still happen. You need to bear in mind that human trafficking is slavery, plain and simply. But more importantly, it's extremely lucrative. The person we saw on that insert referring to $10 to $12 billion was not correct. It's actually $32 billion per annum. That is an estimate, and it is a very conservative estimate of how much is brought in by human trafficking. So, as long as it brings in that kind of money, it will still happen. Our responsibility then is to ensure that we prevent it, is to also ensure through the legislation that is before us that we take care of those victims, whoever they may be, South Africans or foreign nationals who find themselves here.
Let me just quickly interrupt you on that point, sir. In terms of taking care of victims, let's quickly talk about the type of compensation or the type of protection that this law or this bill will provide. Briefly, please.
Very briefly, the bill seeks to punish the perpetrators by making them pay compensation to the victim and to the state. Now, how much that will be is left to the discretion of the courts.
That's assuming that everybody in that chain has been arrested.
That's correct. Well, not everybody. If it is found that a perpetrator of trafficking is arrested and he has certain assets, both here in South Africa and abroad, then we can take the necessary steps to seize those assets and in that way compensate his or her victim.
When do you foresee this bill being passed, though?
We're pretty confident that the discussions at the ministerial level will finish pretty soon, and hopefully before the end of April.
Before the end of April?
Before the end of April. That's my own estimate. We hope to conclude our deliberations.
And then what happens after that?
After that, it is referred to the National Council of Provinces. They conduct their own process. I can't tell you how long they will take. And hopefully not before long, our president should sign it into law.
Well, hopefully before the end of April we'll have some movement on this.
As long as you understand, Lynette, that when the president signs law into force, things don't spring into being automatically. It sometimes takes a while.
I understand that, sir. My concern is just, what do you tell a victim? What do you tell a mother who's waiting for a perpetrator or an intruder to be punished?
Sure.
That's my concern. Thanks for your time.
And we share that concern. Thank you very much.
Dit was dan vanaand se Fokus. Kykers se kommentaar en voorstelle is altyd welkom. Skryf net die woord Fokus gevolg deur 'n kort boodskap en SMS dit na 34444. 'n SMS kos R2. En u kan gerus ook 'n lid word van ons Fokus groep op Facebook. Menseregte Dag is om die draai. Indien jy voel jou regte as 'n mens en 'n Suid-Afrikaner word miskend, moenie swyg nie. Staan op, laat jou stem hoor. Vir my, Lenet Francis en die res van die Fokusspan, totsiens tot volgende Sondag aand.